Hello, I'm playing with Lego again. Can you see what I'm making? I think you might be able to see quite quickly this time. Last week I mentioned building blocks of faith. Well, these aren't those. These are building blocks of Lego. My name is Ian Currey, and this is another episode of Thinking Out Loud. Today, I've been thinking about how faith can grow and how we can build on it. Come on, let me tell you what I think. Every now and then, someone in my family buys me Lego. I'm not sure why, but nonetheless, I take the time to construct whatever it is, and then it'll sit in pride of place somewhere, usually on a shelf, until someone decides to make something else and needs some blocks. This time, the kit was fairly easy to see what it was, wasn't it? But sometimes in the past, you've had more difficulty with this idea, I seem to remember. Now with Lego, it can be difficult to see what someone else is making, especially when you don't have access to the plans, can't it? Although sometimes I like to build things without really knowing what it will turn into. Even with the plans, some of these kits are a little difficult, and I often find myself questioning if that block really goes there. Faith building can be just like this. Let me show you. Now, John records a well-known story in chapter 6 of his Gospel. As usual, a huge crowd has been following Jesus around. This time, it's a holiday weekend, and so the crowds are even bigger than usual. Philip, one of the disciples, says to Jesus, "Even if we worked for a month, we wouldn't have enough money to feed them all." Then Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, spoke up. "There's a young boy here with 5 barley loaves and 2 fish. But what good is that with this huge crowd?" Now we all know what's coming next, but let me remind you. "Tell everyone to sit down," Jesus said. So they all sat down on the grassy slopes. The men alone numbered about 5,000. Then Jesus took the loaves, gave thanks to God, and distributed them to the people. Afterwards, he did the same with the fish, and they all ate as much as they wanted. After everyone was full, Jesus told his disciples, "Now gather the leftovers so that nothing is wasted." So they picked up the pieces and filled 12 baskets with the scraps left by the people who had eaten from the 5 barley loaves. That's a whole holiday weekend picnic basket full for each of the disciples to carry around until they're hungry again, as a rather interesting faith reminder. Now, I'm sure you've heard a lot of people talk about this story one way or another. All sorts of things can be hooked onto the story about how powerful Jesus was, or how little faith the disciples had, and so on. The story can also be made bigger by emphasizing the 5,000 was just the men, or by reminding us that there were more left over than we started with. This is all fun and all very interesting. But today, though, I want to look back at where this all started and have a look at some dad humor I think Jesus may have been using. John doesn't record very much of what Jesus actually said, not throughout this story anyway. In fact, he just records 3 phrases, and you've already seen 2 of them. Tell everyone to sit down, and now gather the leftovers so that nothing is wasted. But the very first thing Jesus says in this story is when Philip must have realized with horror the crowd would need feeding. I'll show you that in just a moment. But when we read it, I want you to think of Philip with a worried look on his face, Jesus with an almost cheeky smile on his, and 1 or 2 of the other disciples, I think perhaps Peter for example, already guessing that Jesus was up to something, and they might just be playing a faith-stretching prank on Philip. I have a feeling too that perhaps Andrew might have been in on the prank. Now, if you add a playful grin to Andrew as he pipes up, "There's a young boy with 5 barley loaves and 2 fishes. But then when Peter spins round to see who's saying something, he says, "Oh, but what good is that amongst such a huge crowd?" Now, before you think I've lost the plot completely, let me read the first part of the story with those vivid imagination things in mind. Jesus soon saw a huge crowd of people coming to look for him. Now, this is where you need to use that imagination I've talked about. Jesus is sitting there on the hill next to Philip, and he nudges him and he points. And turning to Philip, he asks, "Where do you think we're going to buy bread to feed all these people?" Now, the very next sentence gives us a clue to what's going on. Remember now that perhaps some of the other disciples might have guessed something was going on, but certainly not Philip. He's the one with the worried look, remember? Jesus was testing Philip, for he already knew what he was going to do. And this is where we started the story today, isn't it? Philip replied, "Even if we worked for a month, we wouldn't have enough money to feed all of them." Faith for Philip was caught in the moment. He didn't have the Lego plans and had no idea how the story would play out. Now, Jesus, on the other hand, did have a plan, and he knew exactly what he was building for Philip to see. He was testing Philip, for he already knew what he was going to do. It's easy to have faith when you know and when you can see the big picture. Faith is easy when you know what the pieces are all going to do when they come together. But all too often, faith is based on things that we think we already know rather than things we don't. But that's not really faith at all, is it? So how does faith happen? How do we get it? How do we make it grow? To have faith in someone really starts when we trust that person, doesn't it? When we see over and over again that someone does what they say they do and they always follow through on their promises, it's far easier to trust them and then have faith in them, isn't it? My own faith in God is sometimes seen as rather simple, but I'll take that. I think it's probably because I've been around a while and seen how God is simply trustworthy, and indeed, despite me being a bit of a mess most of the time, he always follows through on his promises. So often, I've seen things that need addressing and wonder, well, where's God in this mess and muddle? And often I've waded into a situation only to find that God was already there all along, saying things like, "Oh my, however can we buy bread to feed all these people?" And when I'm paying attention, I wonder if God has a playful smile on his face at those times. All along, God knows exactly what he's up to. And in reality, it's me that is far more like Philip, with a shocked look on my face, wondering where the next meal is coming from. The reality of life is that despite what it looks like, despite the mess, muddle, disappointment and struggle, God indeed does have it. The trick, though, is to somehow trust him to take over the things we just can't. Us doing our next right thing is all we have to do. In other words, what we know to be right, do, and leave the consequences of that for God to sort out. Now, if you found these videos helpful, go ahead and subscribe and pass them on to your friends. Until next time, goodbye.